All right, welcome back to this live broadcast. To the Point starts now, and on our conversation tonight we are talking about GBV. Our guests are already in studio. Just right next to me is Michael Onyango, a member of the Men Engage Alliance. Now, this is an alliance, an organization committed to educating men and boys to stand against GBV and promote positive masculinity, I believe. And right next to Michael is Mary Njoki Maina. Mary Njoki is a dedicated GBV advocate who works tirelessly to support victims and push for stronger legal frameworks. And Mary is from Usikimye. If you are very keen, you've heard about Usikimye. It's an organization that really advocate for victims of GBV. Now, they will be helping me to understand more about this topic and the measures that we as a country are taking to ensure that GBV is completely dealt with. Remember, when we were beginning this conversation, we stated that it was ignited by the recent murder of Rebecca Cheptegei. This is a Ugandan athlete who was murdered by her Kenyan boyfriend right here in Kenyan Trans Nzoia County. And we really just want to understand more about this topic. As always, we start by defining the term GBV, and the United Nations says this is any harmful act directed to an individual based on their gender. It includes physical, sexual, psychological, and economic harm. Now, I'll just start with you, Michael. What are some of the misconceptions that you've heard about gender-based violence, and how have you tried to address this topic?
Okay. Good evening, viewers. My name is Michael Onyango, as you have heard. Many a times you find that when we are discussing about gender-based violence, communities think that it's only about women and girls. And that's more the reason why a lot of individuals within the communities have tolerated the gender-based violence to continue to a level where it has reached that stage where even killing is going to be like normal. And so many people, perpetrators, are being taken to court, and sometimes there is no sufficient evidence to actually charge them with the crimes of abuse, and you find that the next day is outside there having committed crimes, especially against children, women, and even men, because we have identified that also men and boys are exposed to various forms of gender-based violence. So as an organization, we are encouraging people and actually sensitizing them to be able to take action, because it will happen to you tomorrow. The next day, it will be me. So before it reaches that point, we have to do something as a community, as a nation, and also the government.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael, for that. Now, Njoki, Mike has also mentioned that when we talk about GBV, usually it's more inclined to the women's side. Have you, by any chance, dealt with men at Usikimye? And also tell our viewers what Usikimye is all about.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Mary Njoki. I'm a counseling psychologist. I work with Usikimye. Usikimye is an organization that works towards ending the prevalence of gender-based violence. So we are in a community where we try and advocate against gender-based violence, so that we talk to people and also deal with cases. So once cases are reported, how do we take action? When a case is reported, say someone has been abused by their partner, do they know the referral pathways that they need to go to be able to get assistance? So we help survivors of violence be able to report to the police, get medical support, get legal support, and definitely psychosocial support. In the today what has triggered this conversation is case of Rebecca, which is very saddening. Only this year we've had over 157 women who have died by femicide. That's one too many lives to count. And it's a cry for help that action needs to be taken. And we're passing our condolences to the family of Rebecca and all the other survivors who've been victims of femicide. Yes, back to your question, yes, do we also deal with men? Yes, we do. And not so many men we report, which does not mean that the cases of gender-based violence are not happening among them. It happens, but there is a lot of stigma that is perpetuated by the societal perception that men should be strong, a man should not be speaking up, vumilia, wewe ni mwanaume. These are things that make men not to report, or cases not to be reported and followed up on. Yeah.
All right, I think now that brings us to our next slide, which is types of GBV. We have physical violence, sexual violence, emotional, psychological type there. We have economic violence and digital violence. Now, just to start with you, Mike, how do you engage men in understanding GBV and when they're being affected by their significant others?
Okay, our society, being a patriarchal society, we find that at times men don't relate or are unable to identify the forms of violence that you are describing there. They could be exposed to the forms of violence that are there, like physical violence, sexual violence, emotional and psychological violence. More so, the kind of violence that boys and men are exposed to, emotional and psychological violence. And you find that when we go out to the community to sensitize and engage with men and boys, they open up. But at times they are afraid of opening up because they are scared or are afraid of how they will be taken within their peer groups and even in the community. More the reason why when boys and men are exposed to gender-based violence, they do not go out to report. As organizations and as movement, we encourage, but through sensitizing them, to identify and get to know the type of violence that they are experiencing. And through self-expressing themselves, they are able to talk about it and share it with the relevant authorities. Because at times, the issue of talking about violence is also something that many boys and men do not want to discuss, because at times it could be the people themselves who are actually engaging in that form of violence, and they think it's normal. And since they think and feel that it's part of life, then changing or transforming into a person who actually respects either the female and girls that they are in relationships with, so that whenever such a situation occurs, then they are able to check themselves and their actions so that they can control their actions. You know, sometimes when a man is exposed to a situation or an environment that they feel they are unable to handle, then they react. And their reaction at times is negative. And that is why we are trying to sensitize men to be able to transform and adopt positive masculinities. Yeah.
All right. Now, Njoki, there's one that caught my eye here, digital violence. You know, this is not talked much about. And it turns out that even online bullying is a form of GBV. Yeah. Tell us about that.
Cyberbullying is one of the forms of violence that is not talked about, and it's very prevalent. You'll find people in intimate relationships, for instance, will share maybe nude pictures, and then someone, once you've been, you have had a disagreement, that this would be shared in the public. Why were you sharing such pictures? A lot of victim blaming and a lot of catcalling will also happen for the people who've shared or who are even on social media. That does not only mean that in that aspect of sexual assault, it could also be in instances where someone has just dressed and posted a picture of themselves, and then they are cyberbullied based on their appearance or just based on how they carried themselves in a photo. So that really affects an individual and makes them fear even being on social media and sharing their life. And it's very traumatizing because every time you meet even a stranger who does not know about your life, they have an opinion about you. So it affects people a lot.
All right, I would also love to know that what challenges do these victims face in terms of articulating whatever forms of violence they're going through. Now, those forms that are not physical, what challenges are they facing?
I would go for the emotional abuse. For instance, in a case where a woman is being emotionally abused, this could be insults and there about your body, about how stupid or how your intellectual ability is, and that affects an individual. And people will tell you, as long as he's providing, why are you crying? Why are you saying that unaumizwa? So that happens a lot, and because there is no physical appearance to show the abuse that you're going through, not so many people will empathize with people. Not so many people will understand. They'll say it was just a few insults, he was just joking, why are you making a big deal out of it? Another thing that happens is a lot of gaslighting, because once you say the way he said this thing made me feel this way, someone will ask you, you will say you're overreacting, why are you blowing things out of proportion? So there are things that really, emotional abuse, more often than not, there is no evidence to show that, and people do not believe you. And the other question people will ask, what did you do for the person to react the way they did towards you? Yeah, so that's the challenge. There is a lot of stigma, there's a lot of gaslighting. In terms of economic violence, you'll find a woman being told, you're not going to work today, or you shouldn't go to work. You want to compete with me as a man of the house, or things like that. So that's also something, in a patriarchal society, people will think this is a good provider who does not want you to work. But in these tough economic times, we need as much support for each other to be able to keep the families running, to keep the children going to school and things like that. So economic violence and emotional violence are very rampant things that happen, but people have normalized and treated as if they are not forms of violence.
Right.
And to add on to it,
Yes.
and to add on to it, at times you'll find that most boys and also men do not know the line when it comes to actually sexual violence. You find that when a lady says no, they'll think that she means she just needs to be pushed a little bit, and then or saying no, it means a yes. And at times when you engage with them and tell them, you know, there is marital rape, then they are unable to understand that having sexual intercourse with somebody who has actually told you no is a crime. And as organizations, we try to engage with them with men to understand that sexual violence violence and what it means. And nowadays, our courts, the judicial system has actually taken steps, and a lot of people who are exposed to perpetrators of violence, any form of violence, sometimes given a stiff sentence if the evidence is sufficient enough to actually even send that person to jail. At other times, you don't understand economic violence, where you are responsible for taking care of your child, and you neglect that responsibility, or you deny your spouse the right of actually supporting them by actually using the resources that you do have to actually influence the way you want things to go in a relationship, which is not okay. Yeah.
All right, there's a question that's often asked to victims of GBV, and I know maybe you've come across it, our guest tonight. Why do people stay? I don't know. What do you have to say about that, Njoki?
People stay for various reasons. Number one, sometimes it's thinking, will my parents accept me once I go home? Will the society, how will people view me if I leave my marriage? And more often than not is maybe as a woman, people will think you did not persevere in that marriage. You didn't even try to make it work. So people are afraid of what will people say. Other people feel like I don't have a place to run to. There's also the idea that he will change or things will change. I will keep holding on. And you see, unless someone has made a decision that they really want to change, it's not something that you'll push them to changing. There's something called the cycle of abuse. So it starts by creating tension. You'll just feel, today we are not talking, it's Cold War, then tomorrow it's a bit of insults here and there, the food is too salty and things like that. And then from there it goes to the actual verbal abuse or the physical assault. From there it goes to a honeymoon stage where you're told, I am sorry, I didn't mean what I said. You're given grand gestures, a bouquet of flowers, a new Lexus is bought. So that makes you feel, okay, I don't think he's that bad. I just overreacted. And then it goes back to a place where there is now reconciliation, back again to the tension stage. So it becomes, before you realize how many times you've moved around the cycle, it takes too much time and you've invested a lot. Other people think investment has become a lot, so they don't want to leave. So there's so many reasons. Also financial inability, especially among the women. I have 4 children to take care of. How am I going to sustain them after I leave this marriage or after I leave this relationship? So there's so many factors.
Michael, do men stay?
Most of the time, men are also tied to a relationship, thinking that probably their partner would actually change. And at times we find that, like she has correctly put, the cycle continues. And you find that it reaches a point where now that person, the man, is unable to tolerate it. And then you find a situation where now somebody has been hurt or even killed. And in our day-to-day activities, when engaging boys and men, we try to sensitize them to identify and actually get to know the point where you can actually decide to you have had enough, because continuing in a relationship where the relationship is toxic, it affects you psychologically, emotionally, and it drains you a lot. So once the boys and men are able to identify the types of violence that are there and the ones that they are being exposed to, then it's for them now to make an informed decision, either to seek counseling support, because through counseling, you'll find that they are able to cope, and probably also their partner is roped in to be able to actually sort the problems before they go to a different level altogether. Yeah, but the problem is not so many boys and men value the services of counselors. I think that if you go to a counseling session, you are somebody who is a weakling, or you will be exposed, your weaknesses will be exposed, and then what type of a man are you? Yeah, so those are some of the challenges that are there.
You know, one time I was scrolling through TikTok and I came across a video from certain boys, and they were saying, mwanaume unafanyiwa hivi kwa nini? You know, it was a form of violence in some way. It was a very bad word they were using there. Unafanyiwa hivi kwa nini? You know, that is a way of silencing this man. Now, what are you doing exactly to ensure that men are not stigmatized this much, especially on social media, now that is also a form of GBV, from men to men, digital violence? Mary?
I think creating safe spaces, to know that when we talk about gender-based violence, it does not mean women. It means all genders. So when we say creating safe spaces, our organization is called Usikimye. Basically, usinyamaze. When things are going left, we have created a safe space for you to come out and talk to us. And the thing with our organization, we also ensure confidentiality. And that's maintaining the dignity of someone, so that when they come to us, they are sure that we are restoring their dignity. We are not there to expose or make them feel bare. So creating safe spaces, doing community outreach as well, ensuring that people are aware. Some people are going through physical abuse, emotional abuse, but they don't really know that it's a form of abuse.
Yeah.
So starting by creating awareness, doing those community outreach, having interactions with the people on the ground, and understanding in these times, what are your struggles, what are you going through, do you think that where are the gaps that you need support, so that we are able to come up taking a preventative measure rather than coming when things are far too much gone.
Michael, do you think we are doing enough to also sensitize our young boys on the dangers of gender-based violence? Because I think if we were doing enough, then such a video that I came across on TikTok would have been something to be talked about today.
Okay, as a country, we have policies and action plans that are there with strategies of how to address issues of GBV. But when it comes to the community, there's still much that needs to be done. Why? Because you'll find, like the discussion that you had, or you saw on the social media, guys discussing about sexual gender-based violence and encouraging their peer not to tolerate such, to take action. You know, peer pressure at times also pushes a person, a boy or a man, to actually to react negatively. So the thing is, there are times you'll find that as peers, you identify that Michael is actually abusing his spouse, but you keep silent about it. Yeah, you find that in a community, you know your neighbor is actually doing something wrong, but you don't want to interfere because it's not your problem. Yeah, and you find that by doing so, the problem will continue. And nobody will talk about it within that community because it's not their issue. So what we do, we try to encourage boys and men. If you identify, because I remember when we were growing up, and you are walking on the streets and you see somebody bullying a lady or actually trying to rape a lady, we would actually take action and actually support that lady not to be exposed to any form of violence. But nowadays, nobody cares. In fact, they'll start taking or shooting videos with their phone, their found content, and they want to share that content so that they get whatever viewers they want. So I think it's our responsibility as communities to actually act when we see violence, give evidence when it's required in a court of law, because sometimes somebody will be discharged after being charged with a crime of sexual abuse or gender-based violence because there was no sufficient evidence. And yet, I witness it happening because he is my neighbor and he actually does that continuously. And even sometimes I go without sleep because of that violence. Why can't I go and actually stand in a court of law and actually share whatever I have, the evidence that I have, so that this friend of mine is disciplined?
All right, let's take a look at the statistics on reported GBV cases in Kenya. And the general statistics says that physical violence, 47% of women aged 15 to 49 years have experienced physical violence. And in terms of sexual violence, 24% of women aged 15 to 49 have experienced sexual violence. Now, what's worrying is I cannot see the data on men. Do we have them? Mike?
Yeah, that's the reason why we are saying we need to actually, there have been research and most of the research that are being done focus on women and children and girls. But we as an organization are also trying to get data on the men who are exposed to GBV, whatever form of gender-based violence. But at times you find that it's difficult to get that information because nobody comes out or even goes to report. Because I fear when I go to report a case of the experience that I'm experiencing of gender-based violence in a police station, the gender desk, you'll find a police officer who is also not trained or even have skills in actually handling cases of GBV, and they'll put me off by actually saying, Michael, wewe ni mwanaume, wewe unawezaje kuwa unapigwa ama unatoangwa kila siku na bibi yako, wewe ni mwanaume aina gani? So you see, such kind of situation will not encourage me to actually seek justice.
All right. Njoki, who is silencing our men?
He put it well. Number one, it starts by, is there a safe space for me to go report? Or even right at the desk where I should be getting the support is where I am made to feel like less of a person or less of a man. So I think the structures put in place for reporting. Also, like he said, the perspective that people have of a man reporting. Why are you being beaten? Are you not man enough? Already somebody is already questioning themselves before they even go speak out, before even the society gives them a verdict. They're already judging themselves, they're already harsh on themselves, and it also starts just right from childhood. Right from just a 4-year-old will be told, unalia kwa nini, wewe ni mwanaume. A 4-year-old, this is a child who should be able to express themselves. I think right from how the socialization is done in our community, how are we socializing the boys? How do we give them space? Do we create safe spaces for them to be able to express themselves? In a relationship, is there a perception that just the woman is the one who can be the victim or the survivor? Yeah. Are there am I also creating a safe space in my home for the partner that I have to feel safe enough to report? Is the family willing to be supportive towards a man? It's right from those basic units in the community. Yeah.
Of course, still on these statistics, we have, before I come to this, we have sexual violence. Approximately 12,000 cases of sexual violence were reported in 2023. That was reported by the National Council on the Administration of Justice. We have that right here, but I still want the focus to be here. And we have female genital mutilation, FGM, as a form of GBV. By the way, this is not talked much about GBV, FGM as a form of GBV. Yeah. It's still happening in some communities. How are we addressing this, Njoki?
So many communities are hush-hush about it. As recent as last week, I had a case of a 11-year-old girl who was molested and is expectant. And once you go to a community, the community that she comes from, the community that is very protective of their cultures. And some of these cultures are retrogressive. So vices like this will continue going on because this is something that has been reported to the local administration, as simple as the chief in the area, but no action has been taken. So I think the process of reporting is not as it should be. Once I report a case, or once a whistleblower says there is a case of FGM or a suspected raid that is supposed to happen in a certain area, that is enough to call us to action. But there is a lot of delay. This continues to happen. Even in those communities, again, you'll find the girls are being told, if you don't go through this, then you're not woman enough. In this day and age, it's still going on. We might be ignorant of that. In some areas, education is also not as it should be. So not so many people also have the awareness and the exposure that this is not something that should be happening. And the risk that it poses to these girls and to these women.
All right, Mike, I want to come at you with this, This is a report by the National Police Service. Domestic violence has been the prevalent one in homes, with over 45,000 cases of domestic violence being reported. Now, what can be done to help this from a family level?
Okay, initially, you'd find that in a situation where there was turmoil in the homes, we had traditional mechanisms of actually addressing the issues that were cropping up in a relationship, and especially within a homestead. Nowadays, you'll find that with the advancement of our societies, you find that those family structures are no longer there. And in a situation where a case would be reported to the community elders, then they will take action and bring both parties together and try to sort out that issue. Nowadays, you'll find that in the cities where we live, you'll even go for a week without talking to your neighbor. You'll even experience so many challenges within your relationship, but you don't know who to talk to. So the reason why you find that with the empowerment of the culture, and I'm sorry to say this, a lot of women are nowadays empowered to a situation where they know their rights. And the boy child finds himself in a situation where he is unable to cope with the pressures of life. For instance, traditionally, men are the providers. Nowadays, you find that has tilted the other way. We find that the woman can also provide. So that role that a man used to play is shared. So the responsibilities are shared. In a situation where you find you are unable to bring in bread as a man, then there is a problem. And that is where trouble, domestic violence starts. The man feels that they are not being respected as the head of the family. And that a woman cannot control the kind of lifestyle that he wants within that space. So you find that being unable to cope with so many people nowadays, especially boys and men, being unable to cope with the challenges of life, you find that they resort to domestic violence to sort out their issues. And they wouldn't want even the lady or their spouses to talk about it, even in their chamas or religious institutions, like when they go to church, because they'll feel offended and the situation will continue. And in the long run, you'll find that either party is injured, or the children are also involved in the mix, and they get hurt in one way or another.
Njoki, let me bring you in now. In such a situation, what are you doing to help them from a family perspective? Do you bring them together for counseling? Have you received families who have reported cases of domestic violence coming to you, and you counsel them or deal with them from a spouse's perspective?
Yes. Once we receive a case, maybe for instance a woman came in physically hurt, the first initiative is, number one, going to hospital, getting the medical support that they need to get, and then now the psychological support, and being able, number one, to understand that how are they feeling about the whole situation, what action do they want to take. Because again, what we do at Usikimye is we are very survivor-centered and person-centered, would I say. We are dealing with the individual at first, and then once they're able to recover, then can we have a comprehensive care for them? Can we talk to the other party? Can we understand what led to these challenges? Then we're able to do a case management where we're able to do individual sessions, and then at the end of it, now we can do joint session or couple sessions just to ensure that we are walking in the right direction. It does not necessarily mean that they will reconcile, but it also means that can we ensure safety, not only of the parties involved, but maybe of the children that are bred in that family. So it has to be a collective decision as well, and an individual decision for someone, because you cannot push someone to stay in a situation that they do not want to be in anymore. So it has to be a variety of factors have to be considered before making a decision of how do we go about this.
All right, now because of time, I want us to take a look at the impacts of gender-based violence. This is the last one, but let's start from the top, from the data I have here. Physical health. WHO reports that injuries and chronic health issues will be reported, including increased risk of HIV and AIDS. Mental health is also an impact there. The CDC, that is the Center for Disease Control, says there will be psychological trauma and suicidal tendency. We have economic impact, that is a loss of employment or financial burden. And we have social impact, this is isolation and stigmatization or disruption of day-to-day life. And now we have legal and justice system impact. This underreporting and the challenges in a prosecution. Why are we facing this, Njoki? Challenges in prosecution.
I'd start with the underreporting. Whenever there is a case, for instance, of domestic violence, neighbors have heard about it. Family members have heard about it, but nobody is willing to even point out that this is something that needs to be reported and dealt with with the heaviness that it deserves. When you talk about femicide, femicide is preceded by domestic violence. Someone does most, if you look at 75% of the cases that are reported of domestic violence and even femicide, they are perpetuated by someone well known to the person. It's not usually a stranger. 15% would be strangers, but 75% is someone who is well known to the person. So normalization, the community around you have already settled in with the situation. again, watu wanasema mambo ya watu wawili wamejifunika duve moja is none of your business.
Right.
So this makes you, this makes me feel ashamed to go report. This makes a man feel emasculated. Where do I go report this? People already know in this estate that this woman shouts at me or these things are happening. So people will not come out to report. Again, once they go to report, right from the gender desk, maybe someone will be told you need to go fill in a P3 form that requires money. In the community that we work in, even getting food is a challenge. So imagine being told you need to get a P3 and things like that. So the strategy is as simple as that. Transport for me to go appear in court and give my statement. I do not have that. So that impends me getting justice, because even in the case of maybe rape, how do I preserve the evidence of the rape? Do I have information that I need to go to hospital within 72 hours for the right test to be conducted, for the PRC form to be filled? Lack of information. Again, the slow process. Once a case goes in court, how long is it taking for me to get justice? We could look at the case of Rita Waini. This is a case that happened in 2019. When has the verdict been put? 2024. A long time is taken for us to get justice. Hence, someone along the way will lose hope, will stop pursuing the case, will feel like there's no need for me to continue pursuing this if I'm not getting justice. In between, like I said, a lot is going on. Not so many lawyers are also willing to take up cases of gender-based violence. It's draining to be in gender-based violence, because you're constantly having to listen to someone who is in pain, someone who is going through a lot. Not so many people are also willing to uptake cases in that area. So it takes so long for somebody to get justice.
Right, you've mentioned a very good point right there, but because of time, that lawyers are not willing to take up these cases, and that is so saddening to hear. But because of time, Mike, and in 1 minute, what should be done to ensure that these victims get justice?
Okay, I think one of the most important thing that needs to be done is actually the collection of evidence. At times when you find that somebody has been sexually violated, and because of not being aware that they are not supposed to shower or take a bath before going to the police station and even to the hospital, they'll have done that. And they'll even be pushed to go and report, because they are not aware that when you are abused sexually, there is need for you to go and report. There's a situation where at times the prosecution are challenged because of compromising the evidence. You know, with money in our country, you can do so many things. You can buy even you can even actually delay justice so that at least you are able to escape prosecution. There are so many challenges in terms of prosecution, and I think as a community, we try to sensitize the communities to be aware and to actually even know their rights. And I think there are interventions that work together with the legal fraternity to actually sometimes pick the cases and take up cases and see to it that the culprits are taken to court.
All right. Thank you so much for gracing To The Point. This is a conversation that, of course, cannot end at this level. And as we've seen, we need a lot of time to really just dissect the topic of GBV. Now, from what I've gotten is that gender-based violence requires all of us to step up. There needs to be a lot of education in that, and as well as collective action. Our guest tonight was Mary Njoki Maina, a programs assistant at Usikimye, and Michael Onyango, a member of the Men Engage Alliance. Thank you so much for making time once again. Thank you so much for watching. That brings us to the end of our conversation tonight and to the end of To The Point. Have a wonderful night and see you next time, inshallah. My name is Anne Odida.